The term being triggered has been co-opted by the far-right extremists as an insult to more left-leaning and progressive people when they express anger or outrage at the mistreatment of minority groups or at injustice. Especially in online discourse, people are always saying things like, "Triggered snowflake!" But in this video, I kind of want to cut through some of that nonsense and discuss what being triggered actually is, and hopefully remove some of the hold that MAGA and related ideologies have tried to attach to this term. What being triggered actually is experiencing a strong, often unexpected emotional reaction like fear, anger, or anxiety, often due to a reminder of a past traumatic event or a situation that evokes similar feelings. So being triggered is quite literally a trauma response. It's not something that is voluntary or done on a whim. Feeling triggered isn't just about something rubbing you the wrong way. For someone with a history of trauma, being around anything that reminds them of a traumatic experience can make them feel like they're experiencing that trauma again, all over again, and that is actually what being triggered is. So the way that MAGA chooses to use the word triggered, as with most of what they say, isn't actually based on a correct definition of what being triggered truly is. Being truly triggered would be if the victim of abuse sees a graphic abuse scene in a movie and it emotionally transports them back to what they felt when being abused. Or a veteran might hear fireworks and be triggered and emotionally transported back to the battlefield and feel extreme fear or anger. This is completely separate from feelings of a righteous anger or rage at injustice. Donald Trump Jr. was one of the main forces who tried to rewrite the psychological definition of triggered into something completely different. He uses it to describe someone getting offended or their feelings hurt rather than an unwanted, involuntary psychological reaction. He sees it as a tool intentionally used to silence the right by those on the left. This false definition is designed to do two things. Firstly, completely invalidate the feelings of people who are actually suffering trauma responses, sometimes from abusive, violent, and hateful people on the alt-right. And secondly, it claims that being triggered is somehow a choice, even a weapon used against the right. And so now with this new definition, MAGA feels empowered to be cruel, to scream "triggered, triggered" when people are genuinely upset and angry about human rights violations and attempts to limit and take away the rights of different people groups. Or even more so if people express intense emotions and dislike of the alt-right. "You triggered, snowflake" is literally engineered to make people more angry and upset and try to create a more unhinged, intense emotional response in them, to which they can then continue to poke the bear and try and make people on the left look crazy. So rather than its original intention in psychology, which was to help a triggered person understand the trigger and figure out how to respond appropriately or heal from their trauma, MAGA has weaponized it to try and create more trauma, more anger, and more harm. So that's important to understand. What MAGA means by triggered is not actually what truly being triggered means, and it's disgusting and really a pathetic attempt to weaponize a word and a concept that is connected with genuine trauma, fear, and pain. And I'm going to be the first to tell you that I am not immune to actually being genuinely triggered, and even by MAGA. Things that Trump and his cronies do can actually result in genuine triggering. This last week when Trump dropped the tariffs and I looked at the investments that I've been making to try and build up some long-term financial safety nets, I saw them drop significantly. Like, I lost a lot of money and I felt a shocking amount of fear and anger, and just out of nowhere, I literally felt like an out of control rage. And I'll totally admit, I was completely out of control. Like, I was really angry. I was punching my chair because I don't have a punching bag. Like, I was mad and I was getting really, really destructive thoughts. And it wasn't until I did some shadow work around it. Feel free to check out my video that I put out last week to find out more about what I mean by that. It wasn't until I did that shadow work that I realized that growing up in a financially and emotionally unstable household, along with other experiences that I had as an adult with financial instability, had conditioned me into a literal flight or fight mindset. My nervous system was telling me Donald Trump is trying to destroy your life and kill you, and you need to defend yourself. And I realized that that might sound a little bit absurd to some people, and I might get some mocking comments for it, and that's okay. But the idea that I'm really trying to get at here is that the trigger was actually a much more primal fear of me ending up homeless and starving because of circumstances that were outside of my control. The way that I had experienced this fear as a child and a young adult and even as an adult, not because it actually had anything directly to do with Donald Trump's orange makeup looking like crap. Genuine triggers in the way that psychologists mean it always have a deeper root cause, often, but not always rooted in difficult circumstances or abusive relationships in our formative years. And they're also based on very legitimate, real needs and desires. Like, I need money and savings to ensure that I can buy food and pay rent. That's a basic need. And if someone's actions take away that safety net, rather I'm actually deeply triggered or just pissed off about it, that's legitimate. And that brings me into the next thing that I want to discuss around triggering. Because most of what MAGA will mock people for being triggered by, rather it's an actual genuine triggering in the psychological sense, or the ridiculous MAGA version of it. These are legitimate concerns for ourselves and for the people around us. Tariffs making prices on necessary goods go up while tanking stock value and wiping out 401ks is something that is legitimately fair to be mad about. Attempts to disenfranchise minority groups and women are things to be legitimately angry about. Even though I don't have true psychological triggers around either of these things, I can still be righteously mad about them. And some people will have legitimate triggers around these things. Being furious that civilians around the world are being killed, raped, and tortured by oppressive regimes is absolutely something that any moral person should be pissed as hell about. Abuses of power, destruction of alliances and partnerships, and the completely unnecessary and overwhelming levels of cruelty that we are seeing from the Trump administration are things that normal, moral people get angry about. So even if we accept the MAGA-style definition of triggered as someone getting angry and pissed off by alt-right ideas and legislation, to be triggered in this way is not weakness. It's a sign that you, unlike them, have an actual moral center. People who, by MAGA's definition, are not triggered at seeing racist, sexist bigotry have a gaping moral chasm. To be triggered by the loss of freedoms and human rights is actually a good thing. For a long time, I've recoiled at being called triggered when I express my disgust at how the Trump administration and Trump himself act and the policies that they champion. I want to have this cool, collected, unbothered sort of image of myself out there in the world, but what kind of person would I be if I wasn't actually upset at hearing that the Trump administration continues to give Russia chance after chance and aren't sure if Russia is sincere, if they want peace or not, when they are literally dropping cluster bombs on playgrounds and firing missiles at hospitals? Of course, it is critical that we master ourselves and figure out how to constructively channel our anger, sadness, and our darker emotions and impulses to make actual positive change and move the needle forward on making the world a better place. But to be bothered, disturbed, and angry and triggered by these things that are wrong and evil, that is a good thing. So I just want to encourage you, do not let the alt-right mock you for having legitimate, honest, powerful reactions to injustices that they perpetuate or support. Don't let their mockery quiet you down. Don't let their lack of humanity slow down your pursuit of defending humanity and human rights. And just remember that when you do stand in your power and defend the rights of minority groups, asylum seekers, the victims of wars, the survivors of abuse, pushing for equal rights of women, the LGBTQ community, and all of the other issues that we care about, by MAGA's own definition of triggered, they themselves are being unbelievably triggered and they melt down and get super pissed. If you enjoyed this video, consider hitting the thumbs up and subscribing for more content like this, covering self-development, religious deconstruction, politics, and adjacent topics. Hope you have a fantastic day, and I'll catch you very soon.